Uh, this is, I think, conversation number two. Maybe technically three. I had two conversations with Sarah, but this is the third conversation I'm having with Shane of the Rhizomia team. We're talking Cascade Camp. We're the goal, I'd say if I were to have a goal with these calls, it's to like increase awareness, excitement for Cascade Camp. I went to the first Cascade Camp, did not go last year, but the homie Sarah did. And we're kind of going after this like big problem of connection. There is this dope thing called Cascade Camp, August 7th through 10th in Elkin Miss Farms in Southwest Washington, $256. There's going to be a link at the bottom where I'm going to keep doing these like small plugs throughout just to make sure that I nailed the basic goal of these combos. But that this best kept secret problem is something that I keep running into. I think a lot of people, if you're from the teapot communities or these niche communities online, like there is this red badge of courage of being a best kept secret. We have maintained the perimeter of like our vibe very well. And then, at least for me, as someone who kind of likes evangelizing, there is this weird thing of just like, no, no, you gotta check this thing out. They're like, what is it? And I'm like, well, let me sit you down. Do you know about what there was a word you said, Shane, earlier of like taste Overton window? Like, I would lead with something, oh, palate Overton window, and I'd lead with something like that, and I'd see people go, what? And I'm like, ah, shit, the sauce is too, I haven't found a way to move the sauce outside of the context to draw people in, and yet experientially, phenomenologically, I'm like, I know this is great. And you said something really amazing, Shane, about the poetics of Cascade Camp, about the vibe that you enjoy. And I honestly just wanted to hear that again. I think viewers, listeners, it was really good.
Thank you. This is always tricky. Yeah, we were just having a conversation, as one does, for like 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, warming up, talking. So it's been a long time since we talked. It's been like I don't know, a year plus. Anyway, what was I talking about? We were talking about marketing and how weird it is to try to market in general. Marketing, I think the word you used was sort of like almost automatically kind of grifty. Like, like I mean, historically, I'm going to go in a different direction again. I can't repeat myself perfectly, but I'll try to get back into that space a little bit. Might take a minute.
Don't
Historically,
worry, I got the reins.
fantastic, fantastic. It's like the history of advertising, right? We're trying to sell somebody a pack of cigarettes. We're trying to sell somebody something they don't need. There are these associations with consumerism and like the mindless production and consumption of goods. And of course, I'm being sort of one-sided because I'm trying to present this case. Um, not opposed to the material world necessarily, but there is this history of like, and then this history of associations with even the concept of like, I have something that I'm trying to pitch to the world. I want somebody to like be a part of this. And then all of a sudden, where do you go for thinking about that or getting advice on that? Or just what's the headspace that you enter into when you're thinking about interfacing with the outer world? And it's like, okay, all of a sudden you're in marketing or advertising or something. So it's a little bit, and it feels fraught. Once you start to get into it, it very quickly starts to feel like a little bit icky or yucky if you're coming from the opposite direction, which, this is like a community event, whatever exactly that means. Um, right now, it's not like we're making money. It's not like the goal is to make money. I think this is the third event, and every time it's been like, okay, let's see if we can do something. I think it started because Stephen, particularly, Stephen Fan,
Shout
um,
out Steven.
yeah, Stephen, great. I love Stephen. He just wanted to create something. He wanted to meet other people. He'd been doing these potlucks for years in Portland. And those were all very small. It was like 15 or 20 people max. And usually it was more like 5 to 10 people, maybe 15 people on any given night. These weekly potlucks that he'd do. And it was a nice little lovely space in Portland, Oregon, where we'd come together. And I started to go to those very early on once he was hosting them. Maybe the first one, I forget. And it was just a really nice vibe. And then he was thinking, okay, let's open this up to the slightly wider space with the Pacific Northwest in general. And he did this event at Bridge Space, an event space also owned by Ewan, who's the guy who put on and started Alchemist. And it was really good. And then it was like, okay, well, let's try to do something outdoors. Speaking proverbially, he was thinking these thoughts. And then Cascade Camp in 2024 was like or 7 people on the team. It was like a much larger effort where he'd put on the first one solo as a single day long event. And then Cascade Camp, this 3 or 4, I forget, 3 or 4 day long event out in the woods. And at that point, I kind of came in as a as an early organizer. Um, and it was just coming back to kind of where I got onto this. It was just like a community event. There wasn't like a it's not professional. It's not a conference, obviously. So it's something in the teapot camp space, right? Where you're doing it basically because you want to hang out with friends, and maybe you have your own version of this. Maybe you have something slightly like not ideological, but a specific aesthetic vision in mind. But
Yeah.
often it's just because you want to put something on and hang out with people. And
Yes, it's the yes and to that is a lot of the camps are responding to vibe camp in a way. And I do think this is something I've been bringing up in a lot of the conversations is like this is me and Sarah talked about this is mossy vibe camp where it's just like, oh no, this is of the camps like, oh, we're in the woods, we're connected to the land, we're connected to like community. And there's this larger vibe about like, yeah, I just want to hang out with high vibe people. I want to meet new people. But it is, I think you've hit on something really important there. It's not a professional event. It's not even like a creative event. It's not even like a hippie music festival event, which do feel like have very specific tangible outcomes. Like I'm going to see this number of shows, and incidentally, I might meet some cool people. Oh, I'm going to see these like talks from these people, and incidentally meet some like people. I'm going to do a bunch of drugs in the woods, and incidentally meet some people. And there's something interesting about just being like, what if we just started with the meet some people part and didn't need to be selling some extra bit on it? And again, the funny thing that we're in and we're having the conversation with is ah, shit. Yeah, having the thing does make the conversation from the marketing standpoint easier. But I do think it gives us this really interesting opportunity to like get really like fine-tuned on like what does this human connection like mean? Even as you're like talking about this story of like, oh, well, we started doing these potlucks and then we wanted to give more. Like it's not here for money, but I do think there is something about there's a strong desire to share the experience. Like I have a desire to share the experience.
yeah,
Steven keeps putting them on because he wants to share the experience. The goal isn't making money, but there is like an operational cost to do that. But then there is this paradox of I'd like to share this experience that keeps getting recreated almost fresh every single time that is completely emergent of the stone soup pieces that show up. I laugh just because I love paradox and I love polarity in this way, and so there is this ephemera of this experience is real. We've all had it. You've had it. I've had it. Steven's had it. And at least upwards of like about 100 people over 3 years have had it. And if you were to go to them and be like, "What is it?" They'd be like, "It's like the six guys with the elephant." It's like, "Oh yeah, this is a tail. Oh no, this is a tree trunk. Oh no, this is the side of a wall." And how do you draw people into that magic? Like, what kind of people like that dice roll? Like, I went because like I knew I was gonna have a core group of friends, and that the N+4 of that was gonna be super dope. And I keep coming back because I'm just like, well, that pool just extended because I spent 3 days in the woods. So now the
Mhm.
next one keeps growing, and that is a value to me. But there's something at least that I've experienced in Cascade Camp around what I want to call depth. I think vibe camp and a lot of times teapot will hit like intensity, like really high vibe, really shiny, almost roller coaster experience. And you can have very deep connective experiences. I've developed those, but the spaces didn't do it. That was kind of more like my own thing, where Cascade Camp was like maybe like the first one for me, where I felt like, no, something about this space itself is allowing a more sink in experience where it's like it's not let me run to the next shiny thing. It's what is patinaing in this moment right now, and how is it affecting the larger experience?
I think that there's a thing there. I think. Yeah, part of me wants to go into like, okay, why do I think that's happening? But I'm gonna come back to the question that you were asking last time, because I finally was coming back to I kind of have it in my head now where to go with
Mhm.
that. We're talking about what it's like, or what it could be like maybe, but like what the feel of the event is for people who haven't been. Um, and there's something that I really like about it, that I've liked about it in the past, and that it's like a diffuse organizing team, sort of. People have different vibes that they want to bring to it. And I kind of have one that I like the idea of and that I've experienced there in the past and that I want to have more of. And I'm doing my best to kind of make it more of a thing, which is like a sort of like wholesome thing and like homey.
Mhm.
Like you feel at home and like you go there and it's like this feeling of like, ah, yes, I can take my shoes off and like put my feet in the grass and kind of feel comfortable and like easeful and restful. And like there are interesting things that I can get into if I want. And there's a bit of an uncertainty and unknown around the edge of the space. Like almost if you imagine like a farm that you grew up on as a kid and you never quite figured out the boundaries of the thing. And there was
Mm.
this sense of like sort of mystery, but also comfort and familiarity
Mm.
with it. And I mean, Elkin Mist is a farm. So maybe there's not, maybe the analogy is actually a little bit literal. And also, Alchemist as a property is like abutting a massive valley and is sitting on a creek and is right next to this hill. And if you go in like any of three directions, you'll start to get into unknown territory that I've never been into. And it's not even that far outside the farm. It's just like, okay, well, if you keep going up the creek, you can go there. It's just it gets a little bit trickier. Or if you go up the mountain, there's like a set of paths, a slightly Byzantine set of paths with like things hidden in the woods that I've never seen that I hear about. And so there is literally a sort of physical uncertainty. But then also alchemist, when you actually hang around the property, there a lot of it is about the place. It's like a working farm where people do stuff and there are sheep and stuff, and there's a vegetable garden and there are rabbits and um, I don't know, there's a sense of like, okay, there's all of this uncertainty and mystery on the edges of the space, but there's also like a very much a there and one that you feel at home in and that I felt at home in, and a campfire and
Mm.
a little sauna if you want to use it.
Ah,
Um,
that sauna.
Good sauna, right? Good experiences. And so there's again, you were talking about paradox earlier, and I'll pass it back to you, but there's something about like these two ends of this, I
Mm.
feel kind of wide spectrum. And like I want to make pies, like little like Cornish
Mm.
pasties and things that you can carry around and eat. And like I want to make sure that there are more s'mores this year around the campfire and more good conversations around the campfire. And yeah, that like that feels very closely adjacent to Vibe Camp, which is my teapot camp experience, but also very different and
Mhm.
not nearly as like buzzing with constant activity and all of these different sort of festival directions. More on
Mhm.
the other end of some spectrum that I'm not going to try to define there.
Don't worry,
But
I'll take it because I
cool, yeah,
care.
yeah,
Um, these are the images you mentioned something earlier around poetics, and I love poetics, so I wanted to keep that down because I do think when marketing isn't being evil exploitative, it is like selling transformation, imagination, fantasy might be even like a loaded version of it, but it is something beautiful. It is saying, hey, with my one and precious life, why am I going to spend my time and attention doing whatever, buying your toothpaste, doing whatever, or specifically having this experience? And I think what's fascinating is as you were talking about it, I was just like, oh, that's the Shire. But specifically, it's the Shire right at the moment where Sam is like, if I take one more step, I will have gone as farther out of the Shire than I have ever been. And we know what the hell happens in Lord of the Rings. I don't think Cascade Camp is a pitch to Lord of the Rings, but if we were to like go back to that world and tell a smaller story, I do think it might be like, hey, what shenanigans was Sam getting into that made it so that they walked actually a bit of a ways before he got to the like, I've gone as far out of the Shire than I've ever been. Like they're not in Hobbiton. There's no pasties. They are in the woods, but there's this moment where he goes, I know this is the farthest that I have been. And there's something that it's emerging out of Cascade Camp where it's like, what are those micro adventures that happen outside of Hobbiton, but before they're in the old forest? That still is this opportunity for transformation, but that doesn't require you to blow your brains out with drugs. Not that you can't do drugs, but like one of the critiques that I've started to have about the kind of emergent Burning Man culture is what if I obliterated myself? What if I went so far out of my context that I just got to do all this crazy stuff and now I have to do like reintegration work where like I didn't know to say this until this exact moment, but like I didn't need reintegration work at the end of Cascade Camp and still had a transformational time where every other place that I've gone to, it's like, holy shit, like what am I gonna do? I gotta come back. I've gotta because it was I don't know, it felt I'm gonna use mixed metaphors again, but like where sometimes these larger festival events will feel like karate board breaking experiences. This Cascade Camp feels like Tai Chi, where it's just like, okay, I did stretch, I did go farther than, I pushed myself a bit, but there's something about this ecology that never leaves and the spirit of giving. Like you said something that really, it's backwards, but it's real. I feel it, where it's like, if you like to contribute, that's the selling point, but it's a paradox. It's like, come to this place to give of yourself to this suit to create more stuff. it's kind of backwards from the extractive marketing thing, but I think for the people that have that in their spirit, and again, it was no surprise that it was me and Sarah having the conversation first. I met her at the first Northwest at Bridge Space, and I remember shaking them down, being like, "Hey, so what?" Like, I think the first conversation was like, "So when did you realize that you were like a camp counselor helper?" And like they were taking down some stuff, and they're like, "That's not how conversations begin." Like they didn't say that, but like they're very much such a graceful person, and I love wrong seating them by saying crazy shit. Not crazy shit, but like the true thing that no one's talking about, which is like you are a person of deep service. Why are you helping? Aren't you a participant in this event? You just got
Yeah.
here. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
like that's baked in, and we've had conversations about this. The last conversation we both talked about our both of our moms were Girl Scout leaders, so it's like, oh, where is the place for the camp counselors to do their job, but not in fraught, high level experiences, but to have it be personal? Like you say, I want to make pasties and make sure there's more s'mores. I go, hell yeah, that rules. Like I might want to do dancing or bring like music because like I have the capacity to organize a giant crazy thing, but like what's actually like rejuvenating for me? What's actually the thing that like gives me that sense of groundedness and purpose. I'm still using those skills. I still am using that like compulsion to help. One version of that is doing these conversations. I'm like, ah, okay, I get to yap with cool people. Cascade Camp, like cool. Like that's an easy niche to fill for me. But even as I think about what it was there, I was like, oh yeah, last time I was there, I was like playing bars, having weird conversations, the depth, the being able to play with my toys, to bring my psychotech, but to like put it in front of people. Like I said, not in the right context. Like I liked it out in the middle of the woods. I don't want to do it on a stage all the time, buttoned up like, hello, have you seen and this conversation is very much alive right now because I am at the tail end of finishing like a book. So like there was something about like, no, I want to do this. It's not part of the book tour. It's actually something that's quite purposefully orthogonal where I'm like, how am I gonna get my like my soul filled before I go out and actually have to do the really
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
might make it fun, but the boring marketing, hawking, shiny thing while still being in relation, connecting with people for stuff that's deeply important to me.
That makes sense. There's a lot there. I was like, I think you probably are a similar way where I was like, okay, how do I like, how do I define the exact contrast that you're seeking in the before and after?
Yeah,
And I
right.
have a feel of it. I don't exactly have the words, partly because we haven't talked about it, but there's totally something there. Um, yeah, I mean, okay, so this is, stuff comes to mind. This is not a direct tangent off of what you were just talking about, but it came to mind based on something you were saying earlier, which is we're talking about kind of marketing the thing. I remember
Yep.
from it might have been going back to the first one, but at the very least last one, Cascade Camp, I mean. There's this thing of like, and this is what we were talking about right before we went live. It touches on this. You used the word poetics. I'd use that in what I was saying right before. Like these sort of like not a marketing frame on talking about the event or thinking about the event, but almost like a more artistic one.
Mm,
Like I think like of impressionistic painting
mm.
or slightly more modern poetry where and it comes up in Twitter too, or at least it did before premium, and it still does in plenty of cases because you have such a tight character limit where you have to be like evocative with little language and you have to think carefully about like what's contained in the necessary density of your speech and expression.
Deftness.
What do you say?
Deftness.
Yeah, yeah, there's like a combination of like dexterity and weight in the thing. Anyway, I'm waxing too whatever about that. But there is something about like, okay, what's the symbol or what's the feeling? What am I trying to evoke? What is the thing? And I remember with Cascade Camp, it's kind of coming back to me a little bit more now, but there's a direct through line from that to like the sort of wholesome, slightly more normal version of like sitting around a campfire at night
Mm.
and then you want people to arrive on the first day on Friday evening, late afternoon, evening. They get in, there's the like little orientation ceremony, people have dinner, then there's a campfire kind of off in the distance, and they go and sit down at the campfire. And they're hanging out and it's warm, and there are a few lights off in the distance, but really the center of energy is in the warm space around them. And there's the
Mm.
sense of like, okay, I can kind of see this person. I'm trying to get a sense of who this is. And then things quiet down eventually, and they go to sleep, and they have a good night's rest, and they wake up the next morning, and it's like they feel rejuvenated, and then there's a little bit more excitement and the day leads into it. And there's something about like, and I wanted s'mores. I very distinctly remember pushing for like, I want s'mores at the campfire the first night. And I want it to be like a very pleasant, warm landing, and then they are able to feel a little bit at home that night, and then they wake up, and that's the basis of their feeling going into the event. So
Mm,
this is inside baseball in some sense,
mm,
but
mm.
through this, I'm also trying to hopefully express like the vibe of the thing, where you can stay up late, and people have, of course, stay up late, and there are like cool things to do at night, and people do cool things at night. But I think for a lot of people, it's like you just go to bed and then you wake up and it's like you feel good and then you're into the flow of things the next day. And Saturday is when the events actually start to happen. And usually, even though it's not vibe camp levels of intensity, let alone burning camp, whatever, there are like there's a cadence of regular things and options of things to do throughout the day that people just decide to put on. But there's this sense of like homeful, being at home. Homefulness is not actually a word, I think, but it gets the idea across. And then like sort of rest and calm, and then like genuine connection and like wholehearted connection and interesting conversations with really smart people. A random thing where there were only like 30 something people last year, but I think there were like four or five, and I think it was professional category theorists, like on this random farm event. And that's of course outside of the event, just the attractor network nature of the thing. But I don't know, again, polarities with these things, like you were talking about, sort of paradoxes or something.
I think that's solid. I mean, short answer is I think I see myself in what you've described, even from like the first camp. I'm seeing basically like there's some interesting shadows I think that are at play. I think there's ways in which we don't like that this camp has a healing quality for parts of people that they don't want to look at. I'm a shadow worker, so it's great, but I'm like, oh yeah, there is something about like there still is that fey quality to a camp where there is this aspect of I have walked through a portal and now I am here. And, maybe Burning Man is like, I've walked through a portal and I'm in the Bacchanal. And Vibe Camp is, I'm walked through the portal and I'm in this weird, like, cyber solar punk fractal ways. And Cascade Camps is, I've walked through the portal and I'm at the border of the Shire, at the border of the village and the forest. And there's stuff to do there. The land itself has stuff that you can engage with. The NPCs have this thing that you can engage with. And also, hey, you are now in your isekai journey and can make things happen. But if this was like written down as a like fantasy novel, I do feel like it would be one of those cozy core isekai romantic capital R. Not making any promises for anyone. Maybe you have like a romantic experience, but really more of the like I am here to watch my yearning move ecologically through this space without necessarily being stimulated. But the thing that you hit that I think is quite interesting, I'm glad you brought it up, is there still is also this kind of chaotic, interesting randomness of what coherent vibes emerge. Like I remember my Cascade Camp, like I went deep in on it with pop culture, with Aaron, yes. God, those two Aarons. But you know who you are if you remember. But like deep in a way where we're talking about Jack Antonoff, Taylor Swift, like, and I'm like, I'm in the middle of the woods. I know why I am here. I've got my tent, I got the stuff. But that for whatever reason, these two people happen to be the same place to go. That depth, the five world grade category theorists. There is this like almost like fate kidnapping people and being like, this is the experience, this is the container, but also, okay, here's the sort of randomized snapshot. Here's the people who have been raptured to this experience, and there's this extra, I don't know, chaos that still maintains that lineage of the vibe camp, of the teapot, of the synchronicities of like high vibe, high craft, high depth. But just the backdrop is, I think, gentler. Like one of the ways in which if I was trying to pitch uh, Cascade Camp. Let's say you're international for some crazy reason, and you've decided this summer to go to all the camps in the US and Europe for some reason, and you're saying, hey, I want to go to the Northwest. Why should I come to Cascade Camp? The thing that feels very alive for me is this is probably the most sensory kind of the camp experiences. Like I've been to like a few, and again, high engagement is oftentimes really the goal. but there is like an aspect of like shiny light aspect, and this is the one where I'm like, yo, if you got the autism and you're experiencing burnout and you need some like forest bathing and you need something that's not going to overstimulate you like that, like Cascade Camp is a great way in to that experience where again you'll still get the taste of like, yo, where are all these other crazy Twitter people? Like, why is everyone Twitter? Why is everyone doing this thing? You can still get those glimpses, but you can get it baked into a pasty as opposed to shot at you from a t-shirt can.
It's true. I think part of it, there's something you were saying earlier on, and I was like, I don't want to, I won't get into that right now. Putting the exact trace of the thing, but it's coming back where it's like, why do people have the kind of experience they do with the thing? I think part of it is just like the literal scale of the event. Like it's a relatively small space. This is why it can't be like a big 200 person event because the space can only support so much. It's a farm. Um, and specifically, like if you want to walk from one end of the very active region of the space to the other, it's a max 3 minute walk, maybe four.
Mm.
Or if you like, I'm just thinking about it, and if I go from the main house where the like residents of the farm live, I walk down to the outdoor kitchen, and I go past the barn, and I go over the bridge, and I go through the little campground area and into the yurt, basically, which is like the furthest. The yurt is the furthest most end. It would make sense if you were there of
There's a
the
yurt.
event's
It's dope.
happening. It's a yurt. It's a cool place. There'll be music there this time, going later at night. And they actually added, they now have Wi-Fi in the camp area. So for people who
Hey.
been to the last ones, it's like, okay, now there's a new amenity there. That's only a 3 or 4 minute walk max, if you're going at a leisurely pace. And so because of it's not for let alone burning camp, it's not vibe camp. Where if you want to go from one side to the other, I didn't measure it, but easily 15 minutes or something like this, 10, 15 minutes easily. And that's the diameter of the thing. The the whole circumference is crazy big compared to this, compared to the to Elkin Mist. So there's a lot that means things are a little bit denser in a funny way, even though it's all natural. The number of people you're going to run into is probably going to be higher. And
Yeah,
also,
the surface ratio to synchronicity surface area. Like if the people
exactly.
are the trained attractors, it is gentle, large, spacious, but like you said, foot traffic wise, actually quite small. The
Yes. And relatively linear. There are other ways to go. There are tons of directions you can go, but it's like a single line. So that's just technically like the topology of the space or whatever, and the size. But then there's also the feel of it where it's like the hominess, where it's much closer to the size of like a home. It's basically the size of like a homestead, as opposed to the size of like a conference facility or a massive summer camp. Um, and yet there are still a bunch of things to do. There's like the sauna and there's the tree nets, and there are a bunch of different directions you can go explore. And people,
Nests,
the tree nets,
the tree nest. Every time I remember it, I go chef's kiss because
yeah, yeah.
there's similar experiences like that in other spots, but like tree nest is really good, really expensive, and because of the scale of the event, like you can kind of bogart it in a way that doesn't feel like you're waiting for a ride at Six Flags. Like there are some experiences at some of the other events where I'm like, okay, wait for my turn, and I might spend what could be connection time just waiting for the next experience where like you tree nested up, like it has a trained attractor field where you can again I had cool conversations with 6 or 7 people on the tree nest. But then also just like actually I need to dip for a second and just connect with the trees and be up there and feel like it was accessible. Sorry, that was a full
No, no,
tangent.
no, totally.
I love the treatise.
Tree nests are great. Last year, this is a different thing, but like Jeremy, who is one of the attendees, actually set up on the other side of the property a tree climbing setup
Mm,
with like a full-on harness and everything. He brought a helmet and stuff. Up like he'd go like I don't even know 80 feet up the tree or something like that, 100
yeah.
feet up the tree, which is similarly the vibe. It's like okay, professional grade tree climbing is a cool thing. Another supporting thing of the sort of like home-like vibe and the coziness and the wholesomeness is that all of the meals are homemade. Like I'm making my hand pies and I'm doing doing the s'more prep. But Alchemist Sarah, who lives there, is also doing I'll just call all the vast majority, if not all of the cooking for the event. And it's like all homemade meals. A lot of the ingredients for the meals came from the farm itself. it's great. It's cool. It feels good. It feels like, if you're the kind of person who uses the word spiritual or thinks in those terms, which I sometimes do, it's like that feels like spiritually pure. That feels like a
Mm.
good experience. Um, and I
I think
like
the
it.
word you said that I like is wholesome, but like wholesome in the sense of wholesome, nourishing, good bowl of soup. Like in a world in which like my teeth are rotting out because I'm eating high chews and I love high chews. I think you have nailed it. Like without needing to like perform spiritual rites, I can have a like high vibe monastic. Like Sarah pushed back on me with this one. I was like there's a lot of contemplatives that I think come to Cascade Camp. I think the people who understand us a priori, woods, deep thinkers, chill, good food. Like it's not too much of a stretch to go to like a Buddhist monastery where it's like, oh yes, good food, contemplatives. The only thing is you're not allowed to talk at the
Yeah.
monastery. You can talk here.
Talking is encouraged. Yeah. I mean, it's like the gentle via positiva kind of a thing, where
Mm.
it's like, okay, this is like a demonstratively good way to live and a way to sink further into whatever fundamental essence you see out there, experiences being out there, like in a mystical tradition sort of a way. That's also I'm injecting my personal thing because that's always been the slightly more like Buddhist Taoist end of like
You're a part of the soup too,
experiencing the ultimate. Exactly, exactly. And you don't necessarily need to try to escape it in order to understand like higher levels of anything that exists or in order to see peak experiences. It's like going through the thing. Um, but that's also that's its own other conversation.
I'll just go ahead and I think I'll wrap it up here because this is dope. This is the shadow I think I was pointing at that no one wants to talk about. It's a good shadow. This is a golden shadow. I think what we're ultimately what Cascade Camp is a quite accessible, humanistic, spiritual experience. I think the reason why it is so hard to market it is it's the same difficulty to market a Zen, a Taoism. When you get down to it, you're like, what's the voice of Mu? Like, what? Like at a certain point, you're like, what does it fucking mean? But spiritual traditions have sort of solved for this, and I think the humanistic ground roots aspect of it means that you don't get the institutional authority down. Like you get to then wear your patch that says "I went to this monastery." Like even those experiences kind of hold that in, and there's almost like a more rugged purity of just like it's just good being in nature with friends and food but it is being done with a reverence akin to spiritual practice. And again, I'm already bought into it. That's the duality that I deal with, which is cool, love technology, love the shiny, love building things, love doing life of the mind, and also you come from a contemplative Christian tradition of just like, yeah, I went to scout camps, like go to the woods, be amongst nature, be amongst friends. And I feel one in our sort of teapot community is served more than the other, and Cascade Camp is, I think, showing up to serve that other polarity of, like I said, the contemplative, slightly more spiritual thing, the retreat of it all versus the camp. Like it is a camp, but like I do think really, as I'm seeing all the memes and the poetics that pop up, I'd say no, it's more akin to if we were to force a name on it, a spiritual retreat, but without spiritual purpose. Like it is almost like a terrarium style. Like it's just like it's self-evident. You go there, you have experience it, it's dope. I think pushing it a little bit to that space might if you have a spiritual hunger and would like to eat good soup, I do think this is one of the camps that does a really good job at that. Kind of top to bottom, just in inhabiting its vibe.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I have three last thoughts that are basically directly related to that. One comes from this conversation I was having with Stephen, and also my fiance Lauren was on the call too, and we were just talking. I was like thinking, okay, there's the wholesomeness thing, and what's the spectrum with that? It's almost like, okay, if there's like a wholesome to debauched spectrum, this is much more towards the wholesome end of the spectrum. And it's not, I'm sure people have done drugs. I don't think I've done anything when I've been there, so I'm sure people have done that kind of thing, but it's not obtrusive.
Yeah.
That's
And
not the
even
focus.
as someone who has done drugs at Cascade Camp, it still pulls that debauchery towards the wholesomeness.
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
like, yeah, I'm
Exactly.
doing mushrooms and now I'm communing with God in the forest. I'm not doing mushrooms and like,
And it's chill. It's chill.
right? And so there, again, kind of going back to the original of the conversation, the sort of palette Overton window, it does trend in Cascade Camp to wholesomeness, holistic aspects, connecting to land and people. And you can push those edges, like the Sam at the edge of the Shire. Like, yeah, you can go to the Old Forest. Tom Bombadil's in there with his hot wife. Like, there's crazy shit. but you will know once you
That's the
reach.
Tom Bombadil thing. I kept thinking Tom Bombadil. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's perfect. I mean, because that's it's that type of mimetic synchronicity that is the thing where it's like, yeah, you can go out there and it's safe because vibe wise, it's quite clear when you have reached the edge. It's quite clear where you've reached the thing. The tether is not particularly far away. So there's a weird aspect of like intentionality. It's not a swept up style adventure if you're going to push your edges at a Cascade Camp. It is quite intentional, contemplative, just again based on how the space is done. Like you're not falling through a hole and then just being swept away on some, which love vibe camp. That was a lot of my experience where I'll just walk, turn the wrong hallway, and then swoop, and now that's happening for the next whatever many hours. This, I do think there's a sense of agency, ownership over collective experience, individual experience, and then yeah, a safety, a hearth to return to that feels really nice that I haven't had an excuse to say out loud. So thank you for that.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think we're in a good place. This is a good conversation. I kept thinking about the Tom Bombadil thing, like Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, and it's like,
Mm,
okay, they might not make an appearance themselves in the flesh in their exact presence, but there is like a thing there, like a feeling, like a field or something
mm.
like that, that I think is exactly that vibe where it's like, okay, there's also the old forest. There's some spooky things too. If you keep going, it is just the forest, and you've left home. But then overriding this whole thing is also this element of something like sacred and a little bit unknown, and I think beautiful and communion with nature and animals, and there are sheep that you can actually pet and hang out with if you want to. Um, so yeah, it was a good conversation, Wendell.
Yes. Okay. I didn't totally fail. I did it at the beginning. We're gonna say in closing, Cascade Camp, August 7th through 10th, Alchemist, Southwest Washington. I'm gonna put these up on YouTube. I still gotta do the ones that we did with Sarah, but we'll have information. There's a lovely little website. I think yeah, it's like 256 for the weekend. Um,
And it's cascade.camp also is the domain if
and
people want to go and buy tickets, cascade.camp.
perfect. So recording done. Da, 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 da.
Fantastic. Good conversation.